welcome to Utility Sports. We're going to be starting our NBA trade deadline live stream here today. Only going to stream for about an hour and a half or so, but super excited. There is a ton on the line this NBA trade deadline. It's a wide open NBA as we currently sit. A ton of really good, talented teams can make plays that will push them into positions to win an NBA title. In order for them to have a productive season, in order for a lot of these teams, there's going to have to be some moves that are made. We've already seen quite a few. The Cleveland Cavaliers have pushed their chips in a deal. And then surprisingly, we've had a few other buyers. A team like the Sacramento Kings, which I don't think a lot of people expected them to be buyers to the level that they were. And then you also look at a team like, for example, the New Orleans Pelicans, who I think absolutely shocked everyone with their trade. I know that there was a lot of reports coming out on it, but I thought it was going to be a little crazy for them to actually push their chips in. They did, though. ATG Rico, welcome to the stream. Yes, sir. Pacers got a Halliburton. Yes, they did. And Caustic Phobic says, good day, mate. Welcome to the live stream. Hopefully you guys are excited for the NBA trade deadline. I'm going to be streaming the next few days, today, tomorrow, and, of course, Thursday, the day of the actual trade deadline. I'm super excited for everything that's going on in the NBA as we currently speak. It's been crazy. I'm going to keep looking over at my phone, trying to make sure that we are covering everything coming out. Of course, Adrian Wojnarowski loves to drop some bombs on us. We're going to also talk about some other things in general. If you guys are new to the channel, make sure to like the stream here and also subscribe to the channel. It would mean a lot to have your guys' support. We really would appreciate that so very much. It's been a crazy trade deadline up to this point already when you just consider everything that's gone on. A bunch of big trades. We're going to get into those here with those big deals that have already gone down. Sabonis, Holiday, and Lamb, of course, that is Justin Holiday, Jeremy Lamb with Domantas Sabonis. They all went to Sacramento. We have a video up of that on the channel. And then Tyrese Halliburton surprisingly does get dealt along with Buddy Hield and Tristan Thompson to the Indiana Pacers. I think it was big time for Indiana to land that package when you consider what they got for Sabonis. I thought they were going to go for the draft pick route, but they accelerated the rebuild much quicker than that, going with Tyrese Halliburton, someone who's shooting 41% from three, 45% from the field. He's averaging about 14 and 7, and he's having a phenomenal season despite some of Sacramento's issues. Halliburton really has been, in my opinion, their best player this year, and they gave him up for Sabonis, which I think is a little surprising, a little confusing, if I'm going to be completely honest about it. I think, right now Sacramento did get a little bit better today. Sabonis is a slightly better player than Tyrese Halliburton right now, but 2 years from now, Tyrese Halliburton is going to be better. And I think with some of Sabonis's issues, it was pretty surprising to me that Sacramento was willing to make this move. I know Sabonis is really good in the high post. He can be a nice facilitator for a team. That wasn't the issue. Tyrese Halliburton was the facilitator, and he was doing a great job of that. So it was a little shocking to me that they did go ahead and make that move. Welcome, everyone, to the live stream. Absolutely crazy. Burger Does Sports says, Pacers and Pelicans are on top today. Sheesh. Yeah, no kidding. Pacers definitely did a great job. Pelicans, I think they got good value on CJ McCollum. Don't get me wrong. I think they got McCollum for a pretty decent price. But it's confusing to me as to why, especially with the protections they gave up on that pick. I mean, very possible that they give up pick 6 there to Portland, pick 7, maybe pick 8. That's a valuable draft pick, especially for the Blazers, who are probably going to bottom out this year a little bit. They have their own draft pick that they're going to be able to make a selection with. Now they're going to have New Orleans as well, more than likely. They're going to be able to add some premier talent in the draft this year. They're also going to be able to retool for next year with some of the salary cap space they've opened up. I think that Portland could have done slightly better in all of their deals so far. When you look at the Rocco and Norman Powell trade, I think they could have done slightly better. And I think when you look at the CJ McCollum trade, they probably could have done slightly better as well. But they've set themselves up in a way where they didn't have to take in any long-term contracts, and it does make sense for them. They are very, very well positioned. Caustic Phobic says, I think our Pacers are looking for a trade for Brogdon. What do you think? Yeah, they would like to, but he technically can't be traded until March 15th unless they want to have some real salary cap ramifications because of his recently signed extension. So they're basically handcuffed to him. They basically cannot move him. That's why you haven't really heard his name since he signed that extension. Remember, this offseason we had heard him in trade discussions for Ben Simmons, and then everything quieted down once he signed that extension because he's no longer trade eligible up till the trade deadline. Braden here says, I don't get why the Kings traded Tyrese Halliburton. I don't either. If I was Sacramento, I would have chosen him over De'Aaron Fox. Clearly, they opted to go the other way. They chose to stick with De'Aaron Fox. I'm not exactly sure why. Tyrese Halliburton, one of the better facilitators. He's really good in the passing lanes, and he's also a really, really good jump shooter. So it's tough to give up a young player at 21 years old who's shown a ton of potential moving forward. I think that's very surprising to me as well, why they moved on from him this quickly. I won't be able to tell you because I don't know. And it's sad, too, because I love GM Monty McNair there in Sacramento. I thought he was doing a great job. When you look at his most recent drafts, he's only been there for 2 drafts. And in those 2 drafts, he grabbed Tyrese Halliburton, Davion Mitchell, and neither of those guys were top 5 picks. So he's done a really good job. And then he just gave up on it. I don't know if there's pressure from ownership. That's really what I feel, to be honest. I feel like ownership is putting some pressure on him, telling him to try and get this team to the playoffs. Otherwise, maybe his job security isn't there. But that's a red flag to me because I think that they were finally getting some nice young players that I could see them building a roster around, and then they went and blew it up for Domantas Sabonis, who, yeah, he's a good player, but clearly doesn't move the needle that much if you look at Indiana this season, and I don't think he's going to do a ton out in the West either for helping the Kings make the playoffs. Cossack Phobos says, what do you think Hallie and Brogdon backcourt? And then he also goes on to say Hallie has to start, right, you would think. So the thing that's more interesting to me, instead of a Halliburton and Brogdon backcourt, is a Halliburton and Duarte backcourt. I think that Brogdon probably gets traded this offseason. And I think that Halliburton is a massive game changer for Indiana, if we're going to be completely honest, because of his ability to facilitate. He's the perfect player to put in Rick Carlisle's system. I'm telling you guys right now, he is going to blow up in the next 2 years. Halliburton is going to become a near all-star level player within the next 2 seasons because of the way that Rick Carlisle likes to run offense. It's going to be a heavy dose of pick and roll. He is going to be phenomenal in Indiana. I'm a Mavericks fan, so I've gotten to watch Rick Carlisle coach for, over a decade, almost a decade and a half. And I know what he likes, and Tyrese Halliburton pretty much fits the bill for all of it. Tall, lengthy point guard who can defend a bit, can handle the rock, really good facilitator. He's going to be able to hit the roll man. I think Miles Turner should also be extremely happy about this, assuming he does stick in Indiana, because those two are going to be a phenomenal duo together in the pick and roll game. And he's been someone who wanted to be more involved in the pick and roll, and they got a pick and roll point guard now, and Duarte as well. I see him becoming a bigger time player for this team. I know he's a little bit older, 23 years old, of course, on the day of the draft. I'm not concerned about it. His timeline still makes sense with the Pacers. He's a good player. He's able to create for himself. And he's been a little bit more of a scorer than I thought he could be in year 1 of his NBA career. So kudos to him for that. He's been playing good basketball. And I think now Tyrese Halliburton, Chris Duarte, that's the backcourt of the future. I think Brogdon probably gets traded this offseason. But for now, I think that those two can team up pretty well for a solid backcourt. Caustic Phobic says, I'm so happy we got Halliburton. Makes the Pacers more exciting, even losing Sabonis. Oh, yeah, for sure. Sabonis is fun to watch. I think he's a pretty solid player. I think he's one of the more underrated players nationally. But Tyrese Halliburton, to me, is just a more fun player to watch. Anyone who watches Kings games know how good Tyrese Halliburton and Rashawn Holmes were together as pick and roll partners, and how Tyrese Halliburton's really able to hit a whole bunch of tight passing windows. And I think he's one of the players that is going to really accelerate his career with a trade like this. Burger Does Sports here says Brogdon getting traded next year, and there will be Hallie and Duarte with Hield on the bench. Actually, yeah, that's exactly right. That's basically what I was just saying. So that's awesome that you actually had commented that. Caustic Phobos says, yeah, that's what I was thinking, because they're keeping Malcolm for now. I feel can't sit him right. Yeah, you wouldn't want to sit him. I think at this point you just have to roll with him being your starting point guard, keep his value high. And I think you've got Halliburton there who can play off ball as well. He's a phenomenal jump shooter, shooting 41% for his career from 3. And he shoots it with range too. So he's going to be a good floor spacer for Indiana. I think the one thing that I didn't like for Indiana was actually giving up Justin Holiday in that deal. If they could have managed to keep him, I do think that would have been nice. But you have to give and take with some of these deals, and to get Tyrese Halliburton, you say goodbye to Justin Holiday rather quickly. So I can't really blame them for that. Burger Does Sports, you think Holmes gets traded with Sabonis now there in Sacramento? That's a great question. I think they're going to take offers on him. I do kind of like the pairing of Sabonis and Richaun Holmes, though. The issue for me is clearly they want to win. Clearly, Sacramento is looking at the play-in and saying, we want to be a play-in team. We want to try and sneak into the playoffs for the first time in forever, essentially. So trading Richaun Holmes is difficult because you have to find someone who matches his money that's actually going to make you a better team. And unless that's coming on the wing or in a deal with Harrison Barnes, I don't necessarily see it. Which is difficult here because now you kind of have two big men. You have Harrison Barnes who plays the 4. So maybe Sacramento has something else lined up. Maybe they got their eyes on Ben Simmons. That's what could also make sense here. You bring in Ben Simmons, and at that point, you do have something there where you have a big who can facilitate high-low post. You could put Simmons in the dunker spot. You get better defensively that way, but it's a little complicated there in Sacramento now. I just don't love this move for them long-term. I think for now, if they make the playoffs, you look at it and say, that's a win for that franchise. They might hang a banner for that. But realistically, I just don't like it for Sacramento. Kevin here says, you think OKC will do something? If yes, what would be the best thing for them to do? Oklahoma City will for sure be involved at some point. However, it's not going to be in the way that I think would get you super excited. They're probably going to take in a couple bad contracts. They have $33 million in cap space right now. So what they're going to do is they're going to get involved as a third team in basically any deal that needs it. If the Lakers are trying to make a trade, or if a few other teams that are up near the luxury tax, like when you look at the Nets, the Bucks, for example, some of those teams, if they're trying to make a move and get off a bad contract, they will call Oklahoma City because they have cap space to do it, and they'll attach second-round picks, maybe even a protected first, and Sam Presti will bring in a few more assets in a deal like that, which makes sense. And exactly here what Blue Diamond's saying, will be criminal if OKC doesn't use their cap space. Right, exactly, because at the end of the day, there is a floor for cap space, and if you're below that floor, you actually write a check to your players, giving them extra money to fill out your cap space. So actually every player would get a bonus. So I think that they're going to try and find ways to use their cap space, take in some bad contracts, hopefully for them that are expiring, because I think Oklahoma City should try and actually sign good players. I know that sounds crazy, but I'm just not a big believer in let's hope that ping pong balls work out for us. I think that they should try and add some talent alongside Josh Giddey, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, especially for some wings and some veteran forwards. I think that could really help them. But Sam Presti, I think, has other plans. So I think that they should be involved trying to use their cap space, but we'll see. Here we go. Philip Pike says, I like it for Indiana. Duarte, Halliburton, and Isaiah Jackson is a nice young core. Flip Hield to LA and get THT. That's an interesting thought as well. Perhaps they could wrangle the Lakers back into this if the Lakers still are showing interest in Buddy Hield. I think Hield is still a solid fit, though, in Indiana. I think a lot of people are really, really down on Hield. Now, I understand defensively doesn't bring you a ton. Offensively, pretty much just a catch and shoot guy, can create a little bit off the bounce from 3, doesn't do a ton inside the arc. But there's value to that. There's a good value in floor spacing, and I think that he is someone who actually does really help a team coming off the bench. He can score the basketball, can handle the ball a little bit, and I think he's someone who, maybe he doesn't move the needle for a team, but it's nice having a guy like that coming off the bench who can win you some games, help you stay competitive with your bench. And I think overall, you look at him and Chris Duarte on the bench together, pretty intriguing backup combination when you have Brogdon and Halliburton starting. I don't mind it for them. Maybe if they can get THT, I get it, but I'm lower on THT than I think everyone else is. So I think Hield's a solid player. I just don't love the idea of just getting rid of him to get rid of him. And I think Sacramento offloaded him in that deal when I actually thought he would have been a pretty good fit next to Domantas Sabonis. It was at a point where I think the Kings had their mind made up. They were going to trade him regardless of what they got, and threw him into a deal that I just don't think even made sense because I think he's a better player than Jeremy Lamb, for example. But Pi Curry says, you think Warriors will do something? Maybe Turner. Warriors are not going to make a trade. I'll tell you that right now. Warriors are not doing anything drastic at all. If they make a trade, it's going to be a very, very low profile trade. Historically, Bob Myers does not make trades at the trade deadline. When you look back from 2014 to 2018, I believe, he did not make any trades during season that entire time. Did not make any in-season trades, and I think that's going to hold up here. I just don't necessarily see him pulling the trigger on something, especially when it could disrupt chemistry when they're playing so well. They got the second best record in the league, and Draymond Green's still out. Obviously, that's going to be the concern. You're going to have to keep your eyes on that, but For me, and if I'm them, I wouldn't panic and make any moves at this point. Make sure you guys are subscribed to Utility Sports. It would really help us out if you could all hit that subscribe button right now. Also, leave a like on the stream if you're excited for the NBA trade deadline. Let's go on here and talk about the next trade that's already went down. Caris LeVert to Cleveland, Ricky Rubio, a 2022 first and a 2022 second from Houston, go to Indiana in that deal. So Indiana has positioned themselves really well, not only with the Halliburton deal, where they bring in Halliburton. I think the nice thing here too for Indiana is even when you get Halliburton, who's a really good player, you're probably going to lose quite a few games yet to end the season. Let's be honest about it. You're going to disrupt the chemistry in that locker room. You don't really have any rapport across the players at this point now. Now they got better long term, but I think it hurts them this year, which is actually good because they're a team that's trying to pick in the top 5. They haven't picked in the top 9 for over 20 years, and it might be close to 30 years because I think it's 1989. So they're a team that needs to have a top 5 pick, and I think they're positioning themselves to get potentially lucky in the lottery. I mean, if they land a top 4 pick, that's going to be incredible for them when you consider what's in this draft with Jabari Smith, Jaden Ivey. You also have Paulo Banchero and Chet Holmgren. All 4 of those guys could be transcendent for a team like Indiana who needs some more talent. Even guys from 5 through 10 could be really talented. Jalen Duren, for example, Ben Mathurin, he could be a really nice piece out of Arizona. Johnny Davis from Wisconsin. There's a ton of good players. AJ Griffin, I didn't even name Shaden Sharp. This draft is loaded. And Indiana has set themselves up phenomenally because of what options they have now in the draft. They're going to have a good pick. Their pick themselves is going to be really good. They get Cleveland's pick, which is going to help them get some flexibility. You could add a player in the 20s, or you could use that with your pick to move up, or maybe move it back a year and add more assets down the road. You also have Houston's pick, which is going to be probably top 35 since it's a second rounder. And from a bad Houston team, it's going to be there. So they've got a ton of options here now in Indiana, and I think that they've really positioned themselves well. You get off of Ricky Rubio's contract at the end of the year as well. And this is all for Caris LeVert, a guy who, let's be honest, was a net negative in Indiana. The Pacers were not better with Caris LeVert. He did not make that team better. Now I know he's got creation skills. I understand for Cleveland why they needed him this season. But at the end of the day, I just have some concerns about what Caris LeVert really is as a player. I've never been overly high on him, even when he was playing for the Brooklyn Nets. I just never really believed in that. I think he's a bench scorer. I think that's really where his value is. I look at him as a Jordan Clarkson, and to get a first, a high second, and cap flexibility for the future in that deal, that's huge for the Indiana Pacers. For me, they're already the biggest winner of the trade deadline. The fact that they landed Halliburton, you also get Hield in a deal. I'm pretty fond of Hield. And then you get a first and a second as well for LeVert. Regardless of what they do with Miles Turner, I think they're a big-time winner at this point already. I think Portland, surprisingly as well, this CJ McCollum deal actually did open things up for them. I think the Clippers are a good winner as well. I don't have that deal on here, but let's talk about that quickly. They did send out Keon Johnson, Justice Winslow, Eric Bledsoe, and a second-round pick from 2025 for Norm Powell and also for Robert Covington. If all those pieces off the top of my head are correct, I'm pretty sure they are. I do quite a bit of studying to make sure I'm ready for the streams. But it's a good deal for the Clippers. Norm Powell in his debut dropped 28 points. I think Rocco gives them a nice little option too for the playoffs because they're a team that's still in playoff contention. If Paul George comes back healthy, potentially Kawhi Leonard comes back. Robert Covington's going to play some small ball 5 for this team. I actually really believe in that. Zubats, I just get the ick when I'm watching him play in the playoffs because he doesn't give you a ton out of the post. He's an okay pick and roll guy, especially when he's working with Kawhi, because Kawhi and him have pretty good chemistry, especially when Kawhi's going to his right. I mean, I've seen that about 100 times. And then you look at what he does defensively, pretty bad out in space, not an elite rim protector. I think Robert Covington actually would play a pretty decent role for them this postseason. I don't think he probably comes back to LA next year. He'll enter free agency and sign somewhere else. But I think for the rest of the season, he was a nice little throw-in piece for them as well, where they really didn't give up that much besides what you look at with Keon Johnson. He's a good player, but I do have some questions about what he's going to ultimately be long-term. Interesting here. Noah says Zubats an elite rim protector. Okay. I do not agree with that, but Noah says, how are the Blazers going to compete with no star players? So that's a great question here. Burger Does Sports, the Blazers and the Powell trade has to be by far the worst L out of every trade so far. IMO. Okay, so this is interesting. I agreed with that when it first happened, but now with the McCollum trade, I think it's kind of turned the corner, and I understand what the Blazers are doing a little bit better once they were able to get off of McCollum and not take in any massive salary. So let's go ahead. I'm going to take this banner off so we can look at the trade here. CJ McCollum, Larry Nance, Tony Snell to New Orleans, Josh Hart, Tomas Satoransky, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Didi Louzada, 2022 first-round pick, which is protected, and I believe they get it from 6 to 14, and then also 2 second-round picks go to Portland. So the reason why I actually am not in absolute awe anymore about the Norm Powell trade is because of the flexibility they've opened up. They're going to have massive cap space this offseason. They're going to have a good collection of assets now. They've got, I believe, 4 or 5 second-round picks at their disposal. They got 2 first-round picks that they can move. They also have Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who I think is going to have some interest. Josh Hart will have some interest around the league. They've gotten deeper, which I think is actually really good for this team. They needed more depth. Anthony Simons is going to come in and be that guard replacement for Norm Powell and CJ McCollum. Clearly, they're evaluating him very highly. Now, if he gets something north of $20 million a year, I'm going to be a little more critical about it. But they will have cap space. So it's not great value. I think that they could have done better in both of the trades, don't get me wrong. But I do understand at least the way that they're trying to go about this. And they actually had a plan to it. So it could be better, but it could be worse as well because at least it's targeted and planned. Whereas I look at this deal here to New Orleans, CJ McCollum and Larry Nance to New Orleans, I just don't know what that brings. If I'm a Pelicans fan, I'd probably be shaking my head right now. Okay, Noah says I take it back. 1 block a game is not elite. Yeah, that's how I felt. And Noah, you meant when Lillard gets traded. Okay, gotcha. So my thing is, I don't think they're going to trade Lillard. I think they're trying to keep Lillard involved. I think they're probably talking to him throughout this whole process, saying we are trying to retool what we have. We're going to try and bring in a really good player in free agency, or maybe 2 or 3 depth players, guys who can be solid starters for you. And then from there, you try and build this thing up through the draft. They have potentially 2 top 10 picks now because they're going to have their own. They're kind of in the same boat as Indiana here, but their pick going to be better from the New Orleans Pelicans because if they don't get it, they'll get an unprotected first from them next year. But if they do get it, it's going to be between 6 and 14, which is a solid asset. And it's very possible as well that the Blazers bottom out into the top 5, maybe into the top 7. So they're going to have 2 top 10 picks, arguably. And they're going to get good players with those. And that's going to be extremely valuable. Now they're going to be young. Are they going to be ready to compete? I don't know. But what they are going to do is have some real trade value if they do want to go that way. Maybe they try and make a move for another star. It's a way that you could look at this team and say, a year from now, wow, they turned Norm Powell, Robert Covington, and CJ McCollum into player X. Maybe that's Bradley Beal and something. Or maybe it's this. Maybe it's that. There's a ton of different ways that they could make this work and really build out that roster. Now, there's still more work to be done, okay? There's a lot of work to be done. At the end of the day here, their team looks bad because of these moves. Don't get me wrong. But if it all pans out, if they get something great, it works really, really well for Portland. Now, there's work to be done. Again, I'm a little skeptical and if it's going to get done because who really wants to go to Portland, especially with what Gary Trent Sr. was just saying about his son playing over there. But it's interesting. Blue Diamond Gem says, I think Simons is a decent role player at best. I agree. I think he's a bench scorer. I see him in that Jordan Clarkson role as well. Someone who on a good team probably comes off the bench, gives you 14 to 15 a night on decent efficiency, but isn't like a focal point of a team. My concern for Portland is if they are viewing him as a focal point, there's going to be some problems. So I'm not a believer in that. Noah says Pelicans underrated now. They got a big 3. Yeah, I don't know. I don't buy into it. I'm just not in love with it. And Philip says it's funny how people say the Lakers can't upgrade the roster because THT and none have no trade value, but Bledsoe, Lance Powell, and Covington. See, that's true here. That's a great point because the Lakers, and I'm going to be critical of Rob Pelinka here. He is not a good GM. Let's just be completely honest about it. He's basically followed whatever LeBron has told him, which if you're a GM, you're getting paid to make the decisions. LeBron is getting paid to play. So you have to think that through and probably make smarter trades than he's made. Like the Russell Westbrook trade, I said it on draft night last year when it went down, is a brutal trade for the Lakers. I made a video on why they weren't going to win the championship. I talked about how old this roster is, how having to sign a whole bunch of veteran minimum players doesn't really work very well. You look at the 2011 Heat, for example, you can't afford to do that. The 2011 Heat did not win a championship, and that was with LeBron, Wade, and Bosh all in their prime. And part of that was because they were starting a young point guard, Mario Chalmers. They had an old Mike Bibby. You had Joel L. Anthony, who didn't do anything besides protect the rim. It's very reminiscent to what this team is. You have Anthony Davis in his prime, but now you got LeBron, who's a little bit older, missing a few games. Russell Westbrook, who is more likely to break the backboard than shoot 40% from three ever in his career. It's a tough go of things for the Los Angeles Lakers. So I don't see them making any great moves. THT, his value's way down, that's for sure. They could have gotten Kyle Lowry for him last trade deadline, decided not to do it, and it did not pay off well. Here, we got a comment here from Michael. Welcome to the stream, everyone. Make sure you hit the like button on the stream as well. You guys are asking great questions, putting in some great comments. I really do appreciate everything you're doing here on the channel. It's absolutely awesome. Real quick, I'm trying to keep my eyes on Twitter to make sure I'm not missing out on anything. But he says Blazers did this to build around Dame. Assets is what they wanted. Yep, and they've gotten them. And the biggest thing they got too is cap space, so they could go out and make a big free agency signing. Also make a few trades around the NBA draft. There's a ton of things that they can do yet that could really help this team move forward. Gemini says they hit on a couple of those picks. They're in a solid position, have to try to rebuild somehow. Exactly. So that's the question here is, do they hit on those picks? Do they trade those picks for a big-time player? They have options. They just have to execute now, which is the hardest part in sports. Let's be honest about it. You can always set yourself up for success, but it doesn't mean success ever comes through because it's hard to execute. You look at Michael here again saying, thoughts on Boston, buying at deadline or waiting till offseason to make major moves? For me, the only thing they're going to do this trade deadline is trade Dennis Schroeder for a protected second-round pick, probably one that's like top 50 protected, because all they want to do, get off of his salary, get out of the luxury tax, and try and save some money this season. He's not a massive player for that team. In fact, they are going to be, I think, better without him long-term. Also, when you look at the last 3 seasons here, I have a stat too. I just want to talk about Indiana again really quick. The last three seasons since 2018, 2019, here are the 4 players with the most three-pointers made. Damian Lillard has 871. James Harden has made 900 on 35.8% from the three-point line. Steph Curry has made 936, 41.2% from the three-point line. Now, I know he did miss a year in there pretty much, but it's still impressive here. Buddy Hield is number 1 in that time with over 1,000 makes, 1,009 three-pointers made in the last 3+ seasons, and it's 39.6% from 3. So for all the people saying, whoa, he's not that good, I mean, there's some value there to that shooting. That shooting does not come around often and easy, and to find a guy like him basically as a throw-in the steal, I think is a win for Indiana. Burger Sports says, only trade fit I could really see working over the deadline off the top of my head is a Marcus Smart to Hawks for Bogdanovich and picks trade. That's interesting here now because obviously the Hawks do want to get better defensively. But for me, if I'm Atlanta, I would not be giving up picks to get Marcus Smart. I think Marcus Smart's value is actually very low right now. So I think if they gave up Bogdanovich in that deal, I think they'd probably want actually a pick back. Probably not a first, but maybe 2 seconds or something. That's an interesting offer. I just don't necessarily think that gets done. Noah says, I think Celtics will get rid of Smart on their deathbed. Yeah. Ashin here says Bledsoe's contract looks better than Westbrook. Lakers fans think they can trade Malik Monk for Dame time. A little delusional. Yeah, that's kind of how Lakers Twitter goes. Unfortunately, I dabble in NBA Twitter a little bit too much, so I see some of these terrible trade packages that get about 10,000 likes because all their fan base is like, oh, that's great if we could get Damian Lillard for Talen Horton-Tucker, Kendrick Nunn, and Malik Monk. Why would they say no? So it's a little ridiculous. Michael says Schroeder most likely on the way out. If anything, expiring contract and still have potential player exception to use. Yeah, they do. I just don't necessarily know if they're going to have a real appetite to go deep into the luxury tax. And that's really my reasoning why I think they just trade him to a team like Cleveland or potentially a couple other teams that would make some sense. Justin, welcome to the stream. Says, what do you think my C's will do? Please respond. Okay, so for the Celtics there, which is who I'm assuming you're talking about, right? You'd have to look at Dennis Schroeder going out the door. Marcus Smart, I mean, we could talk about him. I think the Mavericks will have interest. I'm a Mavericks fan, so I think the Mavs will definitely have interest in Marcus Smart. They've been tied to him in the past, and I think that could make some sense. When you also look at Boston, I don't see anything massive. Okay, I don't see Jaylen Brown getting traded. Jason Tatum, they're not even going to take calls on, obviously. When you look at Al Horford, I don't see a team really getting involved there. Robert Williams, they're not going to make a move for. They love to keep him there. I would like for them to get a new point guard, but I think that's going to come through the NBA draft, to be honest. I think they're going to try and pick up a guy like Kennedy Chandler out of Tennessee. There's a couple other guys out there that would make some sense for them as well. But for the most part, I think the Celtics are going to stand pat, probably trade off of Schroeder and consider their options for Marcus Smart. And if they could get a decent offer for Smart, I think they'll take it, but I'm not sure if that's out there. Mr. Absolute Truth says the Knicks is getting ready to trade Randle for Grant, and we are going to get back draft picks. For Jeremy Grant, no. Oh, I saw a comment earlier. I didn't click on it. My fault. It was a really great one. I think it was Burger Does Sports. Yeah, here it is. You think Jeremy Grant gets traded or stays this year? As long as we're talking about Jeremy Grant, he's not going anywhere. Okay, the Pistons are not going to trade him because Troy Weaver is a delusional GM. Okay, I'm gonna say it. I think that Detroit is a garbage fire that lucked into Cade Cunningham. Okay, the Pistons are not good in any stretch of the imagination. I'm tired of people saying, "Well, they got 3 rising stars." Okay, a few years ago, Michael Mulder was a rising star for the Golden State Warriors. Sadiq Bey is pretty good. I like Sadiq Bey. He's got some value. Isaiah Stewart to me is nothing more than a backup center who can get some offensive rebounds and be a nice 10, 15, 20-minute guy for a team. And then Cade Cunningham's a star. That's what they are. Jeremy Grant puts up numbers. In the 82 games that he's played for the Pistons, they're 19-63. Okay, they are terrible when he plays. They are not a good team with him on the floor, and he puts up empty numbers. And I'm not a believer in empty numbers. It's hard to score in the NBA. But his numbers are as empty as they can get because he shoots the ball pretty much every time he can. Pretty bad efficiency splits. Does not shoot the ball great from 3. Does not shoot the ball well from the field in general. Not a phenomenal 2-point scorer. And is someone who, let's be honest about it, if you trade him to another team, they're not trading for him to put up 20 points a game. They're trading for him to score about 8 to 12 points a game. And he's already been vocal that he does not want to be in that role, which means teams like Bulls who they're going to look at that and say, well, we'd prefer Vucevic to score over him. We'd prefer DeRozan and Levine to score over him. Are we going to really make a trade for him to be our 4th scoring option when he's verbally said that he wants to be the number 1 or number 2 guy? He wants to be a focal point guy? No. And then are they going to give up Patrick Williams for that? No. Of course, Patrick Williams is going to be better than him next season. Jeremy Grant, the Pistons are going to look for that, like waiting for 3 first-round picks or something ridiculous, especially Pistons fans. Oh, my goodness. They sit there and tell me that he's worth 3 or 4 first-round picks. I'm like, oh, my gosh. No, he's worth 1 first-round pick and a decent young player. And the Pistons are going to scoff at that because Troy Weaver doesn't know what he's doing. And I mean, I've been vocal about this for years. Troy Weaver drafted Killian Hayes 7th overall. I told everyone that was a mistake. I got laughed at. And now he's coming off the bench and shooting air balls pretty much every 3-pointer he shoots because he has no actual scoring ability. He's a facilitator at heart. He's Rajon Rondo if Rajon Rondo was afraid to look at the rim. And realistically, it's just a mess there in Detroit. I'm not a believer in Jeremy Grant. I don't think he's worth a lot. And I know a lot of people who are in Detroit are probably going to get mad about this, but he's just not that great of a player. I'm going to be honest about it. I just don't think that when he's on a really good team, he's going to have a massive offensive role, and that's the limitation for him. And you don't trade 3 first-round picks for a guy who has an offensive capability. Let's be honest about it. Let's go ahead here now let's go down to our next comment here. Here we go. Back to Michael here. Blazers should never have moved Gary Trent Jr. Raptors got a good one. Blazers could use a guy like him now. Facts. That is facts. I said that last trade deadline. I was absolutely shocked that the Blazers traded Gary Trent Jr. for Norm Powell. That was a mistake. I said it then. I'm saying it now. Gary Trent Jr. is playing like a beast for the Toronto Raptors, and I love it. I'm super glad to see it. Here we have Tatooine saying, what would you think of the C's trading J. Rich for THT in a first? Now, that's interesting because if you could do that, you definitely do it. Josh Richardson's having arguably the best season of his career, shooting over 40% from three on pretty decent volume at about 3.5 attempts a game. And to do that, that would be phenomenal. And I could see the Lakers panicking and trying to make a move like that. And if you could swing that, if you're Boston, do it, because I think Josh Richardson next year is going to shoot about 35% from three again, because he's not this good of a shooter. I watched him for a whole year in Dallas, and he was one of the most painful players I've ever seen playing a Mavericks uniform. And I just don't think he's actually that great of a player. But I think he's really found rhythm in Boston. Now, if they keep him, I think he's going to have an okay season for them again next year. But if they can make a move like this, get a first rounder and Talen Horton-Tucker, and that 2028 first, I know a lot of people laugh at that. The Lakers are going to be terrible that season. I'm telling you right now, the Lakers are going to be really bad. If I was a GM and if I felt like I had any job security, like what Brad Stevens should feel like, I would make a move like that, because when you have a young core of Tatum, Williams, and Brown, you can make a move like this. And then all of a sudden in 2028, you might be adding a top 5 pick into an already really good team because you made a good move like this for a player like Josh Richardson, who just doesn't, really do a ton for you, doesn't really move the needle a bunch for a team like Boston, who, let's be honest, Boston is probably not winning the championship this year. Make a move like this. You get a young player in THT who I think actually brings in some nice defensive versatility for you. And then you also get a first round pick. I would love this for the Celtics if they could make a move like this. Justin Anderson says Turner into the Raptors, and it's been a long time. Yeah, Turner to the Raptors would be an interesting one for sure. I'm trying to keep my eyes on Twitter here. I haven't seen anything like that. I think ultimately Miles Turner probably stays in Indiana, if I had to guess. But we'll talk more about Miles Turner here moving forward. What can the Blazers get back for? What can the Blazers get back for sliding Dame, for trading Dame? They'd probably get 4 firsts, 3 pick swaps, and a good young player. Ideally, that's what I think they would get. I don't think they're going to trade him, though. I think it's all about retooling around him right now. And then going to next year, if they have to trade him, they'll trade him. Tommy V says, should I pick up Davion Mitchell in fantasy? Yes. He's going to have a bigger role now with Tyrese Halliburton out. He's going to have more assist numbers for sure. He's going to have the ball in his hands a little bit more. He's a capable player. I do think that's the one thing getting lost here. Davion Mitchell is really good. I really like Davion Mitchell on both ends of the floor, actually. Reminded me of Patrick Beverley coming out of college. I said that all last mock draft season. And then I also said that he's got a little bit more offensive capabilities than what Patrick Beverley's ever had. And I think early into his development here out of Baylor, he's showing some of that, some of the creation ability, some pull-up jumpers from 3 in the mid-range area, can handle the ball a little bit more consistently than Beverley. He can play a true point guard position if you need him to, but he's also really good at the 2 because he can guard bigger guys. I think he's a phenomenal player. To me, if I was running Sacramento, I would have traded De'Aaron Fox, and my thought process would have been, my backcourt is going to be Tyrese Halliburton and Davion Mitchell, and I don't care. I'm going to be good defensively. I'm going to have playmaking and shooting, and I'm going to build around that. That's what I would have done. They chose to go in a different direction, though, and it's interesting. Noah says Monk is better than he was, but at the end of the day, he is a good role player. Yeah, Malik Monk is a solid role player for sure. They did a good job bringing him in. And then, Davion Mitchell will get more minutes for sure and be a bigger part of the offense. Justin says, thank you for the info. I definitely love to talk about basketball. It's my favorite thing to talk about in the entire world. So I'm glad you guys are enjoying. Michael says, thoughts on John Collins possibly being moved? His name always being mentioned in the rumor mill. Noah says John Collins would be a secondary star on every team. I agree. I'm actually really, really high on John Collins. I think he's a phenomenal player. Again, I'm a Mavericks fan. I would love for the Mavericks to find a way to land John Collins. He would give us the burst and transition that we need, the athleticism off the wing. He can shoot the 3 ball. He's one of the more underrated players nationally as well because of what he's capable to do. His offensive skill set's phenomenal. And when he does try on defense, he's not terrible. And I think he's a really good player. I just don't see him getting moved because Atlanta's actually started to win some games, find a little bit of chemistry. It looks like that Cam Reddish trade was pretty much everything they needed to kind of clear that locker room, clear the air there a little bit, and fix some of the issues. Now, if this season ends sourly, I think John Collins is the first player on the trade block this offseason. Him and Ben Simmons, of course. Those two will be holding hands on the trade block all offseason long, more than likely, because I'm guessing Ben Simmons won't get traded this trade deadline, but you never know. Things can always happen. Here we go. Let's look at Burger Does Sports. I will never forgive Grant for snaking the Nuggets. Yeah, he did. And as part of that is he didn't want that smaller role like I'm talking about. And that was the role he was best in, to help a team that was good and be a nice defensive piece for them. He wasn't content in that, and I don't think a team's going to trade for him. I think it would be a mistake for the Chicago Bulls to trade Patrick Williams for him or to trade picks for him. I don't see either one being a valuable way to move forward. I don't think he makes them that much better, and I would not want to give him a 4-year, $120 million contract extension, which is what he's going to want, similar to what Julius Randle got. I put him in a similar boat to Julius Randle where, yeah, he's a good player. Sure, if he's like my third best player on the team and he's content in that role, I'll be chill with that. That's fine. But if he wants to be the 1 or 2, you're probably not going to be that good of a team unless you're like Julius Randle and you shoot 8% better from the field and 8% better from 3 than you've ever shot in your career. Then maybe it works out, but that's not going to happen. Regression to the mean always exists, and we see that with the Knicks this year. And I think Jeremy Grant would be a mistake to trade for. Okay, great. Michael and Noah having a little bit of a chat. That's awesome. Tigers fan says, when do you think Pistons are going to make a move? Right now, they're waiting on a Jeremy Grant trade. I don't see it happening, though. I think that they're going to stick with what they got for the most part. I think they'll try and see if they have any offers for Olynyk. I think that was a bad contract that they signed as well. I don't really see them making any big moves this trade deadline. Mr. Absolute True says the Knicks trading back to Dallas their 2023 draft pick and Fournier for Jalen Brunson. No, this is not happening. I'm going to tell you that right now. The Mavericks have zero interest, actually probably negative interest. They might block the Knicks number if this was a trade offer from New York. That is not happening. Okay. The Knicks don't have enough to get Jalen Brunson unless they attach Emmanuel Quickley. And I know I probably made a Knicks fan throw up there because I think Emmanuel Quickley is great, but let's not forget that Jalen Brunson's basically averaging double the points, double the rebounds, double the assists on better efficiencies than what Emmanuel Quickley is doing right now. Okay. Brunson's a better player than Emmanuel Quickley, and Brunson's way too good to give up for a 2023 draft pick and a bad player in Evan Fournier, who's on a bad contract. I said it this offseason, Evan Fournier was a mistake. I got laughed at for that. And now here we are. We're sitting here February 8th, and Knicks fans are trying to get rid of Evan Fournier. Who would have thought that could happen? Alvin says, hoping Westbrook to be traded. Potentially. You never can rule it out. You know, John Wall, maybe he's looking at LA and saying, I wouldn't mind playing there. And maybe they do it. Costifoba says, prove me wrong, but I think there's no way Portland trades Dame unless he's outright asked for it. Exactly. Completely agree. That is a 100% accurate comment. Gemini says, like Mitchell, a lot too great defender. Yes, for sure. Noah says, why aren't the Magic making any trades? That's a great question. I'm kind of having issues reading what Orlando's trying to do because they have a ton of young players, and I like their grouping. They did really, really well getting Wendell Carter Jr. And 2 firsts for Nikola Vucevic. They absolutely killed that trade. And looking at this team, I like Jalen Suggs. He's a good guard. I like Franz Wagner. He's really surprised me this year. I was questioning him coming into the draft, but he's been perfect for that team. He's done a lot of really good stuff. The guys to watch for me, Cole Anthony, Jonathan Isaac, Markelle Fultz. What's going to be their roles when they come back? The Magic have Chuma Okeke. I don't know where Isaac fits in. I'm not sure where Markelle Fultz fits in. And I'm not sure if Cole Anthony fits in long-term either, because I think at some point the Magic are going to have to make other moves. This team is just not going to be good enough to win. I like each player individually. They just don't all mesh together well. 1 second here. I will be back in just 1 second. All right. Thanks for the delay there. I had one thing popping up on stream quick that I had to take care of. Tommy says, thanks, man. First time watching and subscribing now. That is a great thing to say. Thank you, Tommy. Really do appreciate it. You guys are all awesome. There's 126 of you in here right now. So what you have to do is smash that like button. Smash it. Hit that like button real quick for me. And then also subscribe to Utility Sports. It would mean a lot to have your guys' support. We do really, really appreciate it. You are all so incredibly awesome. Right now, we're sitting at 24 likes on the live stream. There's 127 of you in here. Let's get it to at least 100. So please hit that like button, and let's keep going on here now. Ken Freeman says, have the Spurs done anything? Not yet, but they're a team to watch for. DeJounte Murray, his value is at an all-time high. They might listen to offers on him. There's a ton of things that they could do. Keldon Johnson, I think they're going to want to keep him. they've got a ton of good young players. I think Derek White's probably the odd man out. They're probably going to try and shop him. I'm not exactly sure which teams would be interested in adding a Derek White, though. Maybe the Mavericks, a team looking for another guard. Maybe the Raptors could use another bench creator. That could make some sense as well. But at this point, they have not done anything, and I'm not exactly sure if something's in the works for them or not. Nate Sanders, let's go on here. Do you think the Thunder trade or keep Kenrich Williams? And that's a great question here. I'm going to switch up the trade here quick on the bottom. I'm going to switch it to the Sabonis one so you guys can take a look at that. For the Thunder, keeping or trading Kenrich Williams, I think they trade him. I think they're going to be able to get a good second-round pick for him, maybe 2, and they're going to be able to add some talent through that. Kenrich Williams has been a really good piece for them because he was a throw-in in the Steven Adams trade, essentially, from New Orleans, and he's actually played really good basketball this year. He's been one of the more under-the-radar players this season. I don't think a lot of fans nationally know who Kenrich Williams is. Does a lot of things really well. Pretty athletic, can handle the ball a little bit, can create for himself, can create for others a little bit, likes to get downhill, can also shoot the ball. He's a good player. Kenrich Williams is nice. And I think a bunch of teams would be really lucky to add him. Toronto's another team where I think that makes a lot of sense. I think they could use a little bit more perimeter depth behind OG Anunoby and Gary Trent Jr. up there in the north. And I think that Kenrich Williams would be a guy who could provide that. Let's see here now. Rated R says, healthy Clippers team are the dangerous team in the NBA. Agree. I think he meant to say most dangerous. Yeah, I do agree with that. When you consider what Norm Powell brings to this team, that's the creator they've been lacking in the half court. And I think that it is exactly what they needed. I think if Kawhi Leonard was healthy, I think they probably would have went to the finals last year and maybe won it. Honestly, they played the Suns really tight without Kawhi Leonard the entire series. If it wasn't for the Valley oop and then a couple tough calls in games 5 and 6 from the refs, that series could have ended differently. So if they were healthy, I think they would have won it last year, and I think they probably could win it this year if they were healthy. But at this point, I don't see them being healthy enough, so I don't really think it's necessarily going to be a lock on anything at this point. And at the same time, the Suns are just better. They've got their chemistry this year as well. The Warriors are really dangerous. It's not like it's a lock that the Clippers are the most dangerous team if they're healthy. I just think I would take them slightly because of some of their defensive capabilities. When you look at what Kawhi Leonard did last year in the playoffs when he was healthy, had massive games locking down some of the league's best players again. When he's really dialed in on that end of the floor, he is still the best defender in the league. I do really believe that. I don't think he does that game to game anymore like he used to when he was in San Antonio. Part of that's because of some of his injury history. Some of that's because he's become an offensive megastar. But at the end of the day, when he does lock in, when it's fourth quarter of a playoff game and he needs to shut someone down, they usually get shut down, and Kawhi Leonard is just phenomenal. Here we have a question from Khan. Any word on any 76ers moves? So we're going to get into that here. Let's actually go ahead forward and talk about some other key players available. So these are some of the best players available. Miles Turner here from the Pacers. Of course, I was making this before the Sabonis trade today, and now I do not think Miles Turner is actually available at this point. I think Miles Turner is going to stay in Indiana. They'll take some offers on him. Don't get me wrong. So they're going to answer the phone. I just don't think that they're going to rush anything. The fact that they were able to swindle Tyrese Halliburton out of Sacramento, I think really excites this team about what Miles Turner could now be at that center position full time, where you don't have Sabonis kind of clogging things up, making life tough. Miles Turner doesn't just have to be a floor spacing big. And I'm really excited about what Miles Turner could be for Indiana alongside Tyrese Halliburton. So I do not think he's getting moved now. Bradley Beal for the Wizards. We'll come back to that. Let's talk about Ben Simmons and the 76ers here, because the question is on the 76ers. No word yet on them. They do not have an actual trade lined up at this point, but I think they're just staring down at Brooklyn, waiting for James Harden to become available. A couple weeks ago, I had made a trade video where I said, I don't think James Harden gets traded this deadline, but I do think in the offseason he will be a sign and trade to Philadelphia. And people in the comment section went crazy. I mean, he's not getting traded. Why would he go to Philadelphia? He's in Brooklyn. And then weeks later, all of a sudden, all these rumors are out that he is maybe not content in Brooklyn and kind of wants to go play for Daryl Morey and the 76ers. And now everyone's talking about it. And I said this 3 weeks ago. So there's a video up on the channel. You could go check it out. I'm pretty sure it's either a Brooklyn Nets trade video or a 76ers Ben Simmons trade video. I don't remember exactly what I titled it. But at the end of the day, I was on it. I think that that's what they're waiting for. They're going to look for ways to offload Tobias Harris. I just don't see that happening because he's on a bad contract. And I don't think a lot of teams really want to sign up to take that. Let's go on down here to Eddie. Stop talking about overpaying players. Old TV deal, 25 billion. New TV deal, 75 billion. The new norm will change soon. Like, yes, but at the same time, we're talking about what the current CBA is, and we're talking about the current salary cap. So just because the cap is going to expand at some point doesn't mean the player isn't currently overpaid. Like, there's players right now who are making way too much money for what the current salary cap is, and that's really what you have to rate everything based on. Here, Terrence Butler says OKC should trade for Obi Toppin. I actually really like that. His value is not very high right now in New York because he's really struggling to shoot the three ball. And I don't exactly know why the Knicks are hoping he learns how to shoot the three ball. That's the issue there. Is I'm a Dayton Flyers fan. So I actually watched Obi Toppin immensely closely, extremely closely in Dayton because he was my favorite college player ever. He was absolutely awesome to watch. Our coach Anthony Grant won Coach of the Year that year. We were going to win the national title, I felt, before March Madness got canceled. We were great. We were rolling. Everything was awesome in Dayton. And it was because Obi Toppin wasn't shooting threes. It's because he was rim running. And really what he's meant to do is play small ball 5 in the NBA. He's athletic. You go with a death lineup and try and put some speed and shooting on the floor around him. And you try and outpace teams. And I think that's what Obi Toppin's meant to do. The issue there in New York with Tom Thibodeau is everything he likes to do is predicated on a defensive rim protecting center, and that's not exactly what Obi Toppin is. He's athletic, doesn't protect the rim super well, though. And Mitchell Robinson and Nerlens Noel have been staples at the center position, which makes life tough for Obi Toppin. What's his offensive role going to be when you have two centers who do not space the floor at all and are just, quite frankly, rim runners as well? Obi Toppin would be really benefited by a new fit, and I think Oklahoma City with Josh Giddey, that would be an extremely fun pairing to watch. Those two work in the pick and roll together because realistically, Obi Toppin's best as a pick and roll man. Looking at Axel Power, I just got into your stream. What about the Lakers? Welcome, Axel, to the stream. This is a great time to remind you guys to hit that like button if you haven't already and subscribe if you are new to Utility Sports. It would mean a lot to us if you guys could go ahead and do that. Would really appreciate it. Now let's talk about the Lakers. So let's look at them. Let's go ahead here to, well, here I had the James Harden Nets slide. Let's go back to, we'll just go to this screen for now. Talking about the Lakers. So what they have to offer is Kendrick Nunn, Talen Horton-Tucker, and their 2028 first-round pick, which they'll probably send out unprotected to a team, or maybe like top 1 protected, top 3 protected potentially. And I think that's actually a pretty good package. I'm not going to lie. I understand why teams are a little hesitant to make a deal like that. But to me, if I was a GM with any job security, for example, look at Brad Stevenson, Boston, you look at Nico Harrison and Mark Cuban in Dallas, because Mark Cuban's really the GM, let's be honest about it. They're in Dallas. You look at some of the other guys, Raphael Stone in Houston. I think he's going to have some decent job security because he's heading a rebuild. You also look at Sam Presti. There's a lot of good stuff out there that if you can get a 2028 first from the Lakers, you try and do it. That's really what Kenrich Williams and Sam Presti should be shooting for, is if you can trade Kenrich Williams for a first that far out, that maybe becomes a phenomenal pick. That looks to be one of the best trades ever, because it's very possible it could stick into the top 5, depending on what the Lakers are by 2028. And the Lakers here, I know that they're going to be looking for a really good player. I think best case scenario, they try and find a way to convince Indiana to give up Buddy Hield, make it a 3-team deal, and you try and send that 2028 first and Talen Horton-Tucker for him. I just don't necessarily know if that is what Indiana wants to do. I think Indiana might just be content adding that shooting off the bench. So Lakers are kind of hard to read. It's hard to see a team really wanting to help them out, help out LeBron, help out Anthony Davis, and help out Rob Pelinka. But maybe there's a team out there that does it. I think Kenrich Williams is an interesting name to watch for them. I think Buddy Hield's definitely a name to watch for them, even though he just got traded. I think they could definitely be roped in as a third team if they push hard enough for it. And I think John Wall is another player to watch. I do firmly believe they'll be looking at offers about John Wall, trying to find a way to see if they can get off Russell Westbrook. Another option to watch for, and now this is off the top of my head here, so salary cap numbers might be a little off, but hear me out. It's Russell Westbrook, Talen Horton-Tucker, 2028 first. unprotected, fully unprotected. You trade it to the New York Knicks for Evan Fournier, Kemba Walker, Alec Burks, and to make money work, maybe a guy like Nerlens Noel. But that's kind of tough because, they kind of like Noel there. That's an interesting offer to me because I think the Knicks do need to do something to get better. Russell Westbrook, when he's the lead guy on the team, is pretty good. Let's be honest about it. He just doesn't fit with other co-stars. And I think for Russ, it'd be a good way for him to kind of pick up his production again. But I don't necessarily know if I see something that big, that crazy happening. So I wouldn't bet on that. Let's see here. Kian says, no way. I didn't know that, man. Thanks for rereading it. Oh, okay. So this is, yeah, okay. So he's saying Russ won't get traded. I see. I was missing a little bit of a conversation between some guys. Let's go here. Eddie says, stop timeout over. This is one we already looked at. Christopher McKay says, Magic traded their better players, already need some star power. Yeah, I mean, every team in the league needs some star power. It's just hard to come by. They have to wait for the draft, and hopefully this year they get a guy like Jabari Smith out of Auburn, or maybe a player like Chet Holmgren. You link him back up with Jalen Suggs. They played together in high school. That could make some sense. You Can't Kill Me calls me a casual. DeJounte is going anywhere. Okay. So I'm a casual. I just brought up his name as an interesting piece that they could get a ton for. I didn't say he was getting traded. I think that they'll maybe listen to some offers, though. But thanks for calling me a casual. Appreciate that. Already liked him, been sub for a while. Thank you, Ken Freeman. You're absolutely awesome. JT says Raptors need bench scoring badly. Needed two that can create, most definitely. You Can't Kill Me is probably a Spurs fan here, so I would like to ask him if he thought a few years ago that Kawhi Leonard wasn't getting traded either, because he definitely was a franchise player and wouldn't want a chip once you guys traded him. Asir says, any chance in Lakers trade for Miles Turner? No, not happening. That is not going to happen. The Lakers will not land Miles Turner. The deadline is not today. The deadline is actually Thursday, February 10th. Here we go. We have Chuck Hauser asking about my Mavericks. Do the Mavericks make a move, have limited assets without moving Porzingis? Don't think they're willing to do that, which I think is a bad idea anyway. I would not trade Porzingis. Do not get rid of Kristaps. He's happy. He's content. He's been playing pretty good basketball. He's been huge as a rim protector for this team, and the defense has been really good when he's been on the floor. So I do not see them moving Porzingis. They do have limited assets. I just don't see anything massive happening. I think they were interested in John Collins. They would probably try and make a package of something like Dwight Powell. You also throw in Dorian Finney-Smith, who's an expiring contract, but a really good player that I think Atlanta would have a lot of interest in because of his defensive prowess and 3-and-D capabilities. He's shooting about 39% from three again this year and would fit really nicely there in Atlanta. And then you probably have to try and attach something like a 2025 first unprotected, which gets a little dangerous when you're doing something like that. I just don't necessarily know from my Mavs if I see anything going on, even though I would like for them to try and make a move like a guy like John Collins. I just don't necessarily know if I really see it. Let's go here. We have a question. What about the Bulls? So the Bulls here, they're interesting because, of course, you look at their team. They're really injured right now. Lonzo Ball, of course, had his injury. Look at Alex Caruso, fractured his wrist on a terrible play by Grayson Allen. Great. By the way, my thoughts on that real quick. Grayson Allen should have been suspended indefinitely and allowed to return to play when Alex Caruso came back healthy. He should miss the exact same amount of time that Caruso misses, because that's garbage, that he could just go in there and literally hurt a guy. That's one of the more dirty plays I've seen in the last 10 years in basketball. And he has a track record of this. He's done it a little bit in the NBA. He's done it a lot in college. The NBA should have been stricter on this. A one-game suspension there is a joke. That should have been at least 20-game suspension, in my opinion, and it should have been an indefinite suspension because of what happened, because he fractured a guy's wrist. That's ridiculous. But for the Bulls now, after my mini rant there, of course, no Patrick Williams either. I think they're going to listen to offers on Patrick Williams to try and get a really good player now. Jeremy Grant's, of course, the player that's been tied there. They have Derrick Jones Jr. as the guy they can attach for salary reasons. And they also have Portland's first that's in like 2028. To me, though, if I'm the Bulls, I'm kind of sitting pat. I'm not going to rush. I'm not going to panic. Right now, they've got the perfect blend. They're good right now. They can compete right now. DeRozan, Vucevic, those are the veteran leaders. DeRozan, I don't think he's going to age poorly. His game is really, really defined and well built into the mid-range area. I think he's someone who's going to be able to get buckets into his late 30s for sure. I'm not super concerned about him. Vucevic, I have a little bit more concern about. He's kind of having a career down year a little bit, but part of that's just because of his new role in that offense. But then you also have a ton of young guys. Zach LaVine, still in his 20s. You look at Lonzo Ball, who's really young and was a phenomenal addition for that team. Alex Caruso's young as well. And then Patrick Williams is young. If they just do not panic, do not rush for this year. Do not think, oh, it's wide open. Because you just need one little thing to go wrong to not win. And maybe you screwed up the whole next 10 years because of one little move that you shouldn't have made. I think they should just sit pat, enjoy winning. They're really good right now. Maybe they're good enough to even win this season. The Nets have a ton of problems. The Bucks look a little more shaky, although I think they'll turn it on come playoff time. They have a shot. They have a puncher's chance, let's be honest. And I think for Chicago to make a big move to trade some of their young guys or some of their assets that they built up in some other trades, I think would just be a mistake right now. I think you give it the rest of this season. Maybe you make a small move. A guy like Kenrich Williams, improve your wing bench depth a little bit. A guy like Justin Holiday would have been perfect for them had he not been traded already today to Sacramento. I would have loved seeing him in Chicago. Moves like that would make sense for me for Chicago. I just don't necessarily see them making a move for a big-time guy like Jeremy Grant or John Collins. I just don't think they need to do something that extreme with how good they've been playing this year. Trade deadline Thursday, right? Yes, the trade deadline is on Thursday. Let's see here. John Hamilton says Raptors would do well to pick up Derek White and Pirtle, maybe Dragic, Flynn, and first-round pick. See, that's interesting here. That's a great point on the Spurs. I had to bring up Jakob Pirtle off the top of my head. Of course, I'm doing most of this off the top of my head, so thank you guys for bearing with me a little bit here when I forget to mention a guy's name. But John Hamilton, that would be a really good package for the Raptors. Now, I think the Spurs would maybe want a little bit more, maybe throw in a second-round pick, just because Dragic is a net negative at this point, because realistically, you're looking at that as a buyout candidate there for Sacramento. I don't think he would ever play a game for the Spurs. Hasn't played a game for the Raptors. Malachi Flynn, he's kind of fallen out of favor there a little bit more than I would have expected there, just because of what he was at San Diego State as a college player. But that first-round pick's really what's valuable to San Antonio. I think they'll consider that. They probably would want a couple seconds with this as well, at least one more second-round pick. But the market's a little weird right now, too, because McCollum got traded for just a first and 2 seconds. So maybe you're able to swing something like this. It's not a bad offer. Of course, I haven't checked the salary cap on this to make sure it works, but I'm guessing it does just off the top of my head, knowing what Pirtle makes and Derek White. I think it's close enough to Dragic's $19 million that it probably does work. Maybe you have to throw in another piece in there to get it done. But overall, John, I think that's actually a pretty good package, so thanks for throwing that in there. 1777 memorabilia says NBA is rigged. Who cares about the trades? Yeah, I don't think the NBA is rigged at all. I think that's a little ridiculous. JT says, yep, from Thursday. He's really doubting what the NBA is real. What insider information does this guy have? Burger Does Sports says 76ers are trying to trade Simmons for Harden now by saying he won't resign, and Morey is trying to convince the Nets to see the light. Call me crazy. I think they're right. I think Daryl Morey's right. And this, I'm going to say it now, is going to go down as one of the biggest tampering cases of all time. Daryl Morey's already gotten in trouble so many times by the NBA for tampering, whether it's through his Twitter congratulating a guy. Last year, he congratulated James Harden on a milestone and got fined $25,000 for tampering. And I think it's going to be something that sticks. I think there's tampering here for sure. Daryl Morey is talking to James Harden. I know that for sure. The two of them have a really good relationship. They are exchanging text messages. There's a ton going on that we do not see. James Harden has gotten really cold turkey on Brooklyn very quickly here. Went from super happy playing with his boys, Kyrie and Durant, and now at this point seems like he is looking at Philadelphia as the greener side. And I think he's probably going to be headed to Philly next season for sure. He's going to be a 76er next year. I firmly believe that. It's just whether or not they trade him this deadline. And I think Daryl Morey might get the trade he wanted. He might hold out, get Simmons straight up for Harden, or maybe they, have to throw in another player like Matisse Thybulle. However, I wouldn't like that for Philadelphia if you have to give up Thybulle. He's such a phenomenal defender. But James Harden, it's interesting. And honestly, if I'm Brooklyn, I'd be really thinking about it, because looking at James Harden, and now James Harden is one of my favorite players in the entire NBA. I have so many James Harden jerseys. It's incredible. It's ridiculous, to be honest. But if I'm Brooklyn, I'm looking at James Harden this year, who's been a little more inconsistent. He's been having some more hamstring issues. He's missed 31 games in the last 2 years, where in his whole entire career before the past 2 seasons had only missed 39 games. To get rid of him maybe makes sense when you can get a young multiple-time All-Star who fits what your team needs in Ben Simmons. It might make some sense because you have to look at his extension this offseason. He's going to be wanting a 5-year, $230 million contract. Do I want to be paying James Harden $50 million when he's 36, 37 years old? I don't know. And remember, I'm a James Harden fan. I love watching him play. I think he's one of the best players ever, especially offensively, just magnificent. He's a magician with the basketball. He's incredible. But that aging question is going to be a little difficult. I would consider it if I'm Brooklyn. I really would. I don't think I would make the move this year. I would really try and push for it, though, over the offseason in a sign and trade to get Ben Simmons. Pacers will be lit here, says Hannick. I agree completely. Keith Turner here asking a question. Would you do Evan Fournier 2026 first to OKC for Kenrich Williams and Ty Jerome? If I'm the Thunder, yes, I would. If I'm the Knicks, I'd be a little bit more hesitant. Kenrich Williams is good. You guys heard me talk about how good this guy is for a little bit. I'm a believer in him, but giving out a first-round pick that far down the road is a little concerning to me because that is always something that handicaps you because there's a lot more than just giving up a pick. Yes, that pick is valuable, but it also kills your flexibility because of the step-in rule. The step-in rule is one of the most important rules in the entire NBA when it comes to transactions because once you trade your 2026 first-round pick, it means by rule you cannot trade your 2025 first-rounder or your 2027 first-round pick, which really handicaps what you can do, obviously, because you can't make other trades. If something better opens up later, the Knicks will be like, oh my goodness, we traded a first-round pick for Kenrich Williams, and it handicapped us, it hamstringed us from making other trades because we couldn't move 2 of our other first-round picks, if that makes sense. So I would probably not do that if I'm the Knicks. I would try and really get Kenrich Williams for 2 or 3 second-rounders, because I think that would, be a nice addition for them. But giving up those first with the stepping rule, it does get really tricky and difficult, and it really puts yourself in a bind. If you make one even slightly regrettable move, it could really, really change your outlook for the next 10 years, honestly. When we look at the next one here, Jackson Neely says, think the Jazz make any moves? Oh, for sure. The Jazz right now, they had a huge win yesterday. Watching that game, it was massive for them. Donovan Mitchell put on the show at the end there with a nice tomahawk jam to end that game. It was absolutely awesome to see them get a well-deserved and hard-fought win against the Knicks. And I think they're going to make moves. They've got Joe Ingles' contract, which is going to be probably moved out the door. They've got some draft picks that they could move. And they're an actual team that makes sense to try and move because right now this is their pivot year. This is the big-time season for the Jazz. If they lose in rounds 1 or 2 this year, I'm telling you this is first place you're hearing it, Quinn Snyder is going to get fired. Rudy Gobert is going to get traded. If they lose in the first or second round, they're going to try and retool everything around Donovan Mitchell. I think Mike Conley probably would be safe. I think they'd look at offers for Bogdanovich. And I think they would also look for offers for Royce O'Neal. They would retool everything in Utah if they have a first round exit. If they have a second round exit, I still think Snyder's gone, and I still think Gobert's probably gone, which is crazy because Gobert's phenomenal, and he's a huge part of their defense. But that's part of Quinn Snyder's system, and I think they'd probably move on from him and try and figure everything out, which is part of why the ownership there brought in Danny Ainge, is to make a move. Danny Ainge has been a masterful negotiator in the past. He's made a ton of trades. He's not afraid of pulling the trigger. Even when he has a relationship with a player, he trades them. Look at what he did with Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett. He is not afraid of pushing the right buttons to get his team in a better situation. And for the Jazz, he's coming to do it. And the scary thing is he doesn't even have relationships with these guys. He's known them for about 4 months, which is terrifying because if I'm Joe Ingles and I'm like, oh, I want to play in Utah, good luck with that because I think you're going to get traded. He's going to be aggressive. He's going to make some moves. I'm not exactly sure what. I think they're going to push hard for Jeremy Grant. I just don't see them having enough to get it done, though, given the fact that they don't have their first-round pick this year, because of the Mike Conley trade. And this is exactly what I'm talking about, how they're limited now because they have a first-round pick out the door, which means they can't trade their 2023 first-round pick, which really gives you some limitations. Let's go ahead here now into the next one. Mr. Absolute Truth. Knicks must get Jalen Brunson from Dallas no matter what they do. If not by trade, it'll be by free agency. They'll push for him in free agency. I can see that. They might even try and max him out. I don't think he's worth a max. I think he's worth about 4 years, $80 million. And the Knicks will push for him. You're definitely right about that. I think he'd be a phenomenal fit in New York. I just don't see the Mavericks trading him. I think they're going to try and get him back in free agency and really make something work there. Boston J, welcome to the stream. He says, Celtics do anything yet? Nothing yet from Boston. I'm going to check Twitter again real quick here, make sure I'm staying up to date on everything going on. Nothing yet from Boston. They have not made any moves yet, but they're going to be looking. Here we have a comment. Giddey would unlock Obi. Oh, most definitely. He would be phenomenal. Let's go ahead here. How about Kyrie? Is he moving out of Brooklyn? No, Kyrie will be a Brooklyn net the rest of the season. I don't see any team really wanting to take a risk trading for him. Tosh said, hey, my name is Lee. I'm a Warriors fan in the UK. Anything with them, or do you think they're done? So this is a great question. We talked about the Warriors a little bit earlier on in the stream. Welcome to the stream. If you are new, make sure to hit the like button on the stream. Also subscribe. If you guys are new, it would mean a lot to me to have your guys' support. You guys have been absolutely awesome in the comment section. And talking about the Warriors here, Lee, what I see for them is nothing. I think that they're going to have a very quiet trade deadline. I think they're going to get ready to enjoy the All-Star break and look at themselves and say, we're second in the Western Conference. We're second in the NBA right now. And we haven't even had Klay Thompson all season. We're trying to play without Draymond Green right now. They should feel like they're the favorites. Honestly, I think that they should feel that way internally when you consider what Kuminga's shown for them as a first-year player. Moses Moody's had flashes. You have a ton of chemistry between your top guys as well. Kevon Looney's been playing solid for them when he's been out there. They haven't even had James Wiseman all year. The future is great. The present is great. The Warriors are extremely well set up. Bob Myers, he deserves a ton of credit for what he's done there in Golden State. He's done a great job putting this team together and continuing to complement his best players. And I don't think that they need to make any move yet. Let's go here. Caustic Phobic, who's been in the stream this whole time. Shout out to him. Thank you so much. He says, we haven't talked about it, but I've heard rumors that Charlotte could be looking to move Gordon Hayward. Yeah, that'll be on the table for sure. I think Charlotte was a team that would have looked at a Miles Turner trade. They would have been very interested, probably would have looked at moving PJ Washington in a deal like that. However, now I think Miles Turner's not getting traded. And realistically, Gordon Hayward's their big money guy. He's the player that they could attach to make a bigger move if they wanted to load out a ton of firsts. Maybe a guy like Bradley Beal. That could be a realistic option with all the assets they have. They have some good young players. Maybe you sell Washington on a package of Gordon Hayward, James Bouknight, 2 or 3 first-round picks. That might be enough, especially if Washington's worried that he's going to leave in free agency. That could be enough to pull the trigger. But I don't necessarily see Charlotte making anything super drastic. I think Gordon Hayward will be there past the deadline. It is just interesting to note that he is the player that they could use to make a big move. Raptors trade targets here from Electro Gaming. We talked about him a little bit earlier. Derek White, Jakob Poeltl, those are 2 guys to definitely watch for. Of course, it's funny, Jakob Poeltl actually started his career in Toronto, and I would not be surprised if he ends up back there. You also look at some other players around the league. There's some other options out there. I think the Kendrick Nunn, Malik Monk grouping, Talen Horton-Tucker, some of those Lakers guys could make some sense. I just don't necessarily know who the Lakers would want back in return that they'd be willing to give up. And for the Raptors, I think Kenrich Williams makes sense from Oklahoma City. I feel like we keep talking about him, but he's one of the players that makes the most sense because Oklahoma City is always in asset acquisition mode. And I think Kenrich Williams is a pretty solid wing that you could add to your roster for a pretty cheap number against the salary cap. I think Toronto would love to add a guy like Dorian Finney-Smith from the Mavericks, but I just don't think he'll be available. So at the end of the day, that's really what I'm seeing. Don't worry, I will not forget about the game. I'm actually 20 minutes here behind. I do have a donation. Thank you. Sorry it took so long to get to this. Blue Diamond, you've been absolutely awesome. You've been sticking in here the whole time as well. He says, nice balanced analysis. Is Giddey Rookie of the Year? I think so. So Giddey's been great. Again, thank you so much for the dono. Really do appreciate that. Giddey, he's been awesome. And if the Thunder were winning more games and maybe getting a little bit more national recognition, I would love to see Josh Giddey win the Rookie of the Year. He's been phenomenal to watch. I was very high on him. I believe I was probably the first person to put him in a lottery mock draft last year. In my very first mock draft, actually, I put him, I think, 14th overall to like the Boston Celtics or something. And at that point, he was a consensus late second round pick. And I said, no, this guy's going to be great. And he has been great. I don't think he's going to win Rookie of the Year. I think it's probably going to be a guy like Evan Mobley, who's getting a ton of national recognition because the Cavs are great this season. Could be a guy like Scotty Barnes, who's playing, again, really meaningful minutes for a really good Raptors team. Or perhaps it could be a guy like Cade Cunningham, who, yeah, he's not winning, but he's putting up slightly better numbers than Giddey. I think Giddey deserves to be in the conversation. I just don't necessarily think he's going to pull it out, but that's a great comment and a great question. Let's see here. Y2K says, what are your thoughts on what the Knicks should do with Randle? So that's a great question. Julius Randle, his time in New York has been interesting. Remember his first year there, a little questionable. Second season, he has this absolutely phenomenal year where he makes an all-NBA team and just way outshoots what he is as an NBA player. And then this year is what we call regression to the mean. His performance has regressed back to what he is as a guy, back to his average performance. And Knicks fans don't like it. And that's what I was telling them back when he was having his great year. I'm like, this is not what he is. He's not that type of guy. So for Randle, I think that they're going to look for offers with Sabonis now in Sacramento. Obviously, that De'Aaron Fox, Julius Randle thing is all shut down. That's not happening at this point. I just don't really see a team taking in Julius Randle at this point. My guess is he's going to stay in New York. I think they should try and move him. I'm just not a believer in what he is. I think that they have to probably refocus this team again. It's a mess, but at the end of the day here, I don't see him getting moved. Mr. Ray here says, apparently Jeremy Grant is very much available. What kind of value do you think Grant is potentially worth on the market? I'm inclined to think he's worth a young asset and a first-round pick. Yes, and that's what I think he's worth. I think he's worth a first-round pick and a decent young player, like a Dante DiVincenzo type of player, not a Patrick Williams level, a Dante DiVincenzo level. That's what I think he's worth. If the Milwaukee Bucks were to call and offer a first this year and Dante DiVincenzo, I think that's what the market value should be. And I think that the Pistons probably abruptly decline that call or don't take the trade. They hang up on him essentially because I think that Troy Weaver probably wants 2, maybe 3 first-round picks. And I just really, really don't believe that that's what the value should be for Jeremy Grant. However, I understand he's one of the better players available, which pushes his value a little bit higher in a lot of people's minds. But at the end of the day, an NBA GM is not going to say, oh, well, he's the best player we can get, so we need to up our offer. No, they're going to look at it and say, what would we realistically value this guy as? And why would we want to give up more than we actually physically think he's worth? If we evaluate his talent at a first and a decent young player, we're not going to give up 3 firsts just because other teams might get involved and offer 2 firsts. Like bidding happens, but it's not to an extent where all of a sudden a team doubles what their original offer was, right? Like if a player's worth double the original offer, that means the original offer was terrible and that team probably doesn't want to talk with you anymore. NBA GMs don't, spit in each other's faces and, do all this stuff that makes you look like you don't know the value of the league. So for me, I think that they're going to be very, very cautious in making a move if I'm Detroit. But at the end of the day, I think that they should try and take a deal like that, a first and a young player. It could help springboard what this team could be. But at the end of the day, I think they're going to stick with Jeremy Grant. Let's go ahead here. I'm jumping down to some of the more recent trades. So more of the recent comments. So if I did miss your comment, I am sorry. We're good. We'll get through it. Soul says, any word from the Wizards? So here he's asking about Washington, of course, and the Wizards. Nothing yet from them. They were really interested in Domantas Sabonis. I had actually made a video yesterday talking about how I thought Sabonis could end up being a Washington Wizard in an attempt to try and keep Bradley Beal super happy in Washington. At the end of the day, Sacramento came in and outbid them, clearly, with a Tyrese Halliburton offer. I just don't think Washington had anything to match that style of offer. And for Washington here now, I think they're going to try and find a way to get off of Spencer Dinwiddie. What I think makes some sense is maybe a 3-team deal where Spencer Dinwiddie goes to Dallas, you get the Raptors involved, and you try and send Goran Dragic to Washington so Washington can buy him out, open up some money, flexibility for them. The Mavericks probably send a couple second-round picks to Washington and a second-round pick to the Raptors, and that's essentially the deal. For that, the Raptors get off of Goran Dragic's money, which is, highly intriguing to them. They probably are going to buy him out after the trade deadline if he doesn't get moved. The Mavericks get their player in Spencer Dinwiddie, and then they probably sign Goran Dragic as well once he hits free agency. That's what I think would make some sense. A 3-team style deal like that for the Wizards, where they get off of Spencer Dinwiddie's contract just because he hasn't worked super well next to Bradley Beal. But at the end of the day, if they don't move him, it's not going to be the end of the world either. Keith Turner says Dallas is keeping Brunson. They're not trading him. Completely agree. I don't see him going anywhere. Aaron Roy, likelihood of Knicks trade, not very high. I think the Knicks are going to call around, look for some offers. I think Fournier is going to be the player that they want to ship. However, he's not very good, so I don't think that they're going to get anything for him. Mr. Absolute Truth says if the Knicks don't make a move for point guard Jalen Brunson from Dallas, Tibbs will be gone because of player youth. I don't think he'll be gone. I think they're going to stick with him, but I definitely understand your concern. Ronald Waller says, hello. Welcome to the stream, Ronald. Glad to have you in here. Make sure you guys hit the like button. Let's see how many likes the stream is at. I am going to refresh it here. We're at 60 likes. There's 170 of you in here. Please hit that subscribe button. I know not all of you have seen our content before, and it would be really great if you are enjoying this analysis and this breakdown of the NBA trade deadline. To hit that subscribe button would be great. Here, Apollo says, breaking. Patrick Williams and a first-round pick sent to the Detroit Pistons for Jeremy Grant. I have not seen that, so I do not believe that is true. Do not buy into that, Apollo. What's your source on that? I'm interested. Here, Ronald Waller says, do you think Washington Wizards will trade Bradley Beal? No. What I think will happen is Beal will opt into his contract, sign an extension with the Wizards, and then ask to be traded, or opt into his player option, ask to be traded, get traded to the team he wants to go to because there's not a ton of salary cap space this offseason, and then sign an extension with that team. Trevor wants to know any Sixers rumors. There are some Sixers rumors out there. When you look at the 76ers, the biggest thing is James Harden. That's the player they're waiting for. They want this guy right here. They want James Harden, and they're going to push for him. No surprise there. Once Daryl Morey landed in Philly, we knew it was possible Harden might become a 76er at some point. Once he got traded to Brooklyn, all of that seemed to cool off, but clearly not. I think there is some tampering going on here. I think this is going to be a really big investigation that the Nets are going to push for the NBA to conduct, because I think they're going to be really outraged if James Harden either signs in Philadelphia or if they do trade him to Philadelphia. I think there's going to be a lot of writing on the wall that says that James Harden basically demanded his way out within a year of landing there, which is absolutely incredible. And for James Harden, I think he would be a really good fit for now with the Brooklyn Nets. It's interesting. They're a team that needs a little bit more speed. They don't run very fast. In transition, they're one of the slowest paced teams. They also don't rebound the basketball super well, so maybe Harden can help you with that. He does grab a ton of boards as he sits help side and doesn't really play a ton of defense half the time. But for the most part, it is interesting. Let's go ahead here. Rahul says, I was hoping for a Miles Turner trade, and then says Kings lost this trade. Yeah, I think the Kings lost it as well when you look at what we got on the bottom line. Here, just a quick little ad as well. Use code utility20 at manscaped.com for 20% off any product plus free shipping. We would love for you to get any product you want at manscaped.com. Use code utility20 again for 20% off plus free shipping anywhere in the world. That's all you have to do. D-Money here says Ben Simmons wants to join the Warriors. Yeah, the unfortunate thing for Ben Simmons is he has zero leverage because he's in a long-term contract and he's not playing right now. So teams don't really know what they want for him. I don't think the Warriors would make a move for him, just given with where they're at. I think that would be a little extreme for them to try and make a big move like that. Iverson Vlog says, I need Gordon on the Suns. Eric Gordon would be a nice addition to the Phoenix Suns. I don't necessarily know if I see it, though. Just given some of the salary cap implications with how much money he makes not only this year but next year, it becomes pretty difficult. TZ here says, how about Raptors trade for Miles Turner? That's interesting. So you'd have to look at like a Chris Boucher as a starting spot. You'd probably have to try and attach other valuable players, maybe a draft pick or two. Oh, that's interesting. Miles Turner would be great. He'd be a great fit in Toronto. kind of would round out their whole team. Gets you a floor spacing big man who can shoot. I just think at this point, though, Indiana's not going to move him. I think he's going to stay in San Antonio. I think Jakob Poeltl is going to be the guy for the Raptors. I think they're going to pull him from the Spurs, which brings us over to Zena Hollick. Welcome to the stream. Says Spurs trade targets. For me, I don't think that there's any. I don't think they're targeting any players. I think what they want is draft pick assets and some flexibility. So I think if they make a trade, it's going to be like Derek White out the door or Jakob Poeltl. I think they're going to take calls on everybody. But at the end of the day, I think they're only going to get serious about trading those two guys. They already traded Bryn Forbes this year. I think they're going to look at Derek White as a trade option and also Jakob Poeltl, just because I think what they have too with Eubanks behind him and also Landale. They got a pretty solid group of young guys there in San Antonio, so I don't think that they should be extremely panicked holistically. Let's go back here now and let's talk about Exia here saying Lillard likely to be traded in offseason. Yeah, I think so as well, for sure. Lillard likely to be traded. Yeah, I think not for sure. Maybe. I think depends on what their offseason moves look like. If they fail to get a star, then it's like red alert there in Portland. Or if they fail to, get 2 like top 10 picks, then it's probably red alert. But as of right now, I don't necessarily think that they have to be super concerned. Raptor, welcome to the stream, says now that Turner's probably not available and asking prices for centers are high, I really want the Raptors to trade for Danilo Gallinari. Interesting. Someone wants Danilo in the year of 2022. I would not want Danilo Gallinari. I understand why, though. I think he would fit the Raptors what they need offensively. My only concern is defensively. He's just kind of a liability at this point of his career. He was a really good player when he was playing for the Knicks, Nuggets, Clippers, but his tenure in Atlanta has been a little more questionable, and I just don't see that being an extremely valuable asset for a team like Toronto. Nick Nurse is really creative defensively, though. He could probably hide Danilo Gallinari better than any coach in the NBA, but I just don't know if I love that overall. Javon here says, do you think the Warriors will trade James Wiseman? No. He is going to be in Golden State. They are not going to trade him. Oracle says Eric Gordon to the Suns already. Come on, James Jones. I understand the fit. I do. He'd be a valuable bench piece for them for sure, but I just don't think it happens. When you look at their playoff rotations already, it's already kind of tight. So you got Chris Paul, Campaign, Devin Booker. That's 3 guys already. You got Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder. Then you look at that's 6 already. Then you throw in DeAndre Ayton in there. You also have the combination of like Frank Kaminsky, Bismack Biyombo as your bigs. That's an 8-man rotation there already at this point. So for me, I just don't know if I believe in that. Eric Gordon going to the Suns, I just don't see it, but maybe. I wouldn't rule it out. It's not a bad fit. I think he would fit pretty good there. I just don't see it up. Air Pegasus says they gave up Halliburton. Yes, they did. Trevor says, I need Ben Simmons off my team. Yeah, I'm sure the feeling there in Philadelphia is not super high on Ben Simmons. Guys, hit that subscribe button right now. I'm going to be streaming here for another 5 minutes. Make sure to hit the subscribe button. I'd love for you to be a part of what we do here at Utility Sports. It would mean a ton to me. If you could hit that subscribe button, I would really, really appreciate it. Just because we do so much stuff here, and I think it is really a collaborative platform. Y2K here says, do you think the Mavs are interested in any of the Knicks players? You guys seem to love our former players. We do. We like to bring them all in. Kristaps, Frank Ntilikina. There's been many more too along the way. I think the Mavs would have most interest in Mitchell Robinson, who had a phenomenal game last night against the Utah Jazz when Rudy Gobert was out. I believe he put up 17 points, 20 rebounds, 3 blocks, had an absolute dominant performance. Watching that game, I was actually FaceTiming my co-creator during that one. I said, oh my gosh, Mitchell Robinson's kind of a beast. Like, he has games where he's just the best player on the floor half the time, it feels like, and it's like insane as a rim protector. Now, I know the Knicks probably would like to keep him, and his value is going to be interesting. I think the Mavericks would have a ton of interest in him. It's just tough to see a deal getting done, though, between those two teams again, given the fact that they already have their 2023 first. So the Mavs can't trade this year's first. They can't trade 2024's first. It's very tough. Supposedly, Portland is engaging in trade talks with Detroit for Grant. Blazers have interest in Jeremy Grant. I swear. Oh, my gosh. I'm going to say it now. if the Blazers trade everything they've gotten for McCollum, Powell, Robert Covington, and they trade it all, and all their flexibility and everything for Jeremy Grant, Damian Lillard should walk into the GM's office, their interim GM's office, by the way, which is why part of this is a little questionable. Walk in there and hand him a piece of paper that says, trade me now. Okay, if they trade all that for Jeremy Grant, I'm going to lose my mind. Ryan, welcome to the stream. Says, thoughts on the Boston Celtics. What do they need? For the Celtics, they definitely need to get off of Dennis Schroeder. His contract is not good. They're in the luxury tax because of him. So I think they're going to trade him, probably try and get a low second round pick. And they're going to look at Marcus Smart, try and move him as well. But I don't think that they're going to necessarily get anything for Smart at this point. Let's go here. Eric Gordon to the Jazz or to the Grizzlies. So TZ here offering two options. I don't necessarily see Eric Gordon getting traded to the Grizzlies just because of how well Desmond Bane's playing, and they don't have Dylan Brooks currently. He's not healthy right now. Eric Gordon to the Jazz, though, is the one that makes more sense. It gives them another creator off the bench. Now, I know Jordan Clarkson's been pretty good in that role since he got to Utah a few years back, but I do think it would add a little bit more dynamism. There's a narrative going around that Eric Gordon's a pretty solid defensive player. I don't know where that started. If you look up defensive rating, which basically accounts for how many points your team gives up when you're on the floor, he's last in the NBA. He's the worst defensive rating player in the entire league for qualified players. So defensively, not really that good, in my opinion. Ryan here says Halliburton got disrespected. Most definitely did. The Kings made a huge mistake trading him. So that's a little questionable to me. Let's go here. Ronald here says Bradley Beal and second for Anthony Simons. Only if you're a Blazers fan, right? Justin Archer says, where would Julius Randle's landing spot be? It would have been Sacramento had they not traded for Domantas Sabonis. I just don't see a trade for him now at this point with that kind of closing the door. Maybe Indiana's like, hey, if we could get him for cheap, that'd be interesting, but I just don't necessarily see it. Martin Van, as a Portland fan, we should have kept McCollum longer to find better options. We got pocket change for him. I think you guys did okay for him. He's really good. McCollum is, and he's a player who I think if he had a bigger role would have done, more statistically. But at the end of the day, you got a bunch of okay young players who could play roles for you, and you got flexibility, which is one of the most underrated things in all sports. Getting flexibility is huge in basketball because it gives you options throughout trade deadline, throughout the NBA draft, making other trades. It gives you options in free agency. And that's something Portland hasn't had because you look at what Neil Olshey had done as GM. He gave Alan Crabb a huge contract, gave Evan Turner a huge contract, and locked himself into a whole bunch of these weird players where Blazers fans probably don't even know what the word flexibility means because of some of Neil Olshey's moves when he was the GM there. I think that they're going to be in an interesting spot. Now, it still takes execution. I'm not saying this is a lock that the Blazers get better through this, but it's at least a potential pathway to get better. And I think there is a little bit of hope there in Portland because of that. I'm going to stay on here for just one more minute. Trevor says subscribed. Thank you so much. Make sure you guys all do subscribe. It does really mean a lot to me. We do have some other content up on the channel as well. Mock drafts. We got some other trade videos. A ton of stuff that I would love for you guys to check out. So make sure you go and do that. Raptors said I really wanted Josh Hart on the Raptors. Yeah, it is unfortunate for sure. Kings trade. Let's go ahead and put that back on the bottom line here for you guys one more time. Here it is for that deal for the Kings. They did move Halliburton, Hield, and Tristan Thompson for Sabonis, Justin Holiday, and Jeremy Lamb. Ronald Waller, subscribe. Thank you guys so much. Again, I'm just staying on here for another 30 seconds or so. I do have to go coach. I'm actually a basketball coach. So I have a game to go coach yet today, but hopefully you guys are enjoying. I am going to live stream tomorrow and Thursday. So there is still a ton for you guys to have come in here. Get questions ready for me. Write them out tonight. Get everything planned. Even throw in some mock trades. Do whatever you want. Okay. I would love to answer all your guys' questions going into the future. Raptor, thank you so much. John Gutierrez, keep Barrett, trade the rest. I honestly don't care. We need a change. Yeah, I think that does make sense. I just don't know what the Knicks potential options are going to be for trades. I just don't see a lot of value for a lot of their guys. Grant to the Hornets, another option. That is actually not a bad idea. Grant to the Hornets does make some sense. I don't necessarily know if I see them pulling the trigger, but maybe they'll have some discussions, which is the biggest thing. Here, Javon Gillett says, you think Warriors can sign anybody to a 10-day contract? Off the top of my head, that's a little difficult to fully answer. I'd have to look through kind of who's there and who maybe could be out there for them. A guy like Monta Ellis, I would love to see Monta Ellis come back on a 10-day contract for Golden State. That would be such a feel-good story. I'm a huge Monta Ellis fan. And of course, he started his career, or Steph Curry started his career rather, with Monta Ellis there in Golden State. And there was a huge decision between the two of them. Obviously, they made the right decision holding on to Steph, and they really springboarded themselves trading Ellis, actually. But it's crazy. Warriors, I would love to see Monta Ellis go back. Hopefully, again, you guys did enjoy today's video and live stream. Go check out some of the stuff on our channel. Subscribe to Utility Sports. It would really mean a lot to us. And also leave a like on the stream. We would really appreciate it. You guys have been absolutely awesome. Again, I am wrapping things up here. I'm going to be live tomorrow. I might even be live again late tonight. So if you guys want to stick around, turn on notifications, hit that subscribe button, leave a like on today's stream if you did enjoy. Again, thank you all so much. You're really awesome. Love the viewership. Absolutely killed it, guys. Really smart comment section, honestly, and a lot of really good basketball discussion, which I love. So thanks again so much, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.